I tried walking 100,000 steps in one day. That's 75 kilometers or 46.5 miles, which would be a straight line distance between London and Oxford. 100,000 steps is 2,700% more steps than what the average American walks in a day. Will I make it or will I fail? Alright, so it's 7 a.m. and here's the game plan. I need to walk pretty much 7,700 steps every hour if I'm gonna plan to finish at 8 p.m. You know, maybe chances are I'll be probably going a bit longer than that, maybe until 9 to 10 p.m. But yeah, in a perfect world, 5.6 kilometers per hour speed and 7,700 steps every hour. What I'm gonna use to measure is the Oura ring, right? But the Oura ring works only if you're like actually just walking in real life with your hand. So if I'm outside, going to the store, walking the dog, whatever, then I'm gonna use the Oura ring to count my steps. If I'm working on the computer, then it's obviously not going to count any steps because my hand is on the keyboard, so it doesn't count the steps that I'm taking on this treadmill. But the treadmill itself has a step counter, so basically I'm just gonna sum up the Oura ring steps plus the treadmill steps at the end of the day and see, because that's, you know, whenever I'm on the computer, the Oura ring isn't counting my steps. Whenever I'm outside, the Oura ring does count my steps.
1 hour later.
The Oura ring shows I have had 4,000 steps and the walking pad shows 4,500 steps. So 8,500 steps. It's kind of 9 a.m. right now. I'm kind of still a bit behind. I started a bit later, but regardless, I'm at 8,500 here, so I'm kind of falling behind at the moment. Now, for the record, walking 100,000 steps has nothing to do with health. I just use it as a fun challenge and educational content. On a daily basis, you don't really need to walk any more than 9,000 steps per day. A 2023 analysis of 12 studies saw that going from 2,000 steps a day to 8,700 steps was associated with a 60% lower all-cause mortality risk and a 51% lower heart disease risk. Going up to 16,000 steps provided an additional 5% reduction, but the majority of benefits came from just going from 2,000 to 8,700 steps. So I don't think that you really need to walk more than 9,000 steps in one day.
I'm sweating. I'm making sure that you will not fail.
Am I going back in time?
Well, you need to catch up your steps.
I'm reducing my steps. I don't know, my steps are going down. So it's 1 p.m. and I'm at 30k steps, which means I'm behind 16k steps according to the aggressive estimate of the timeline. But in this speed, I'll probably have to finish around 10 p.m. if I'm gonna keep going at this speed. But maybe I'll just go for a run and catch up on that. At this pace, I knew I wasn't going to make it, so I had to incorporate some faster walking and running. So it's 4 p.m. and I have actually crossed over the 50k line halfway through the challenge, but I'm still behind 15k steps, so I still need to catch up.
Babe, what are you doing? Go walk.
By 5 p.m, I knew I had to step up my step game if I was going to finish before midnight. So I just locked in for the next few hours. I took Apollo out for a long walk. I ran around with him to play. I walked on the treadmill for several hours straight. And by 7 p.m, I was over 75k steps. which means I still had 1/3 to go.
One eternity later.
Alright, so it's 11:17 p.m. and we finished the challenge. We reached 100k steps. So the total is I got 37k steps on the Oura Ring and 63.6k steps in the walking treadmill. Generally, I'm feeling quite fine. I'm just feeling a little bit sweaty. I'm gonna take a shower, go to bed, and let my leg rest. Alright, so it's the next day. Let's recap some of my experience. I walked 100k steps and it took me about 17 hours, out of which I was walking pretty much 16 hours. It ended up taking 75 kilometers of walking, and based on the Oura Ring and the walking pad, it burned 7,200 calories, which I'm not sure how accurate it is, but I probably burned at least 5,000 calories. Physically, it wasn't that difficult for me. I never felt like I had to quit or I couldn't take it anymore. Honestly, I could have kept going for another 50k or something, but it just takes so much time, and I don't want to mess up my sleep schedule. Around 50k steps, I did start to feel like my legs were a bit sore, and my knees started to get a bit more stiff. I think that's just because of the repetitive motion, especially walking on a treadmill. You're just hitting the floor with your feet for such long hours. It would probably be very different if you were to walk on like sand or grass or something soft. During the walking, my body temperature and metabolism increased quite significantly. I wasn't like sweating profusely, but my body was very hot and evaporating a lot of heat because of the exercise. I also ended up going for number 2 in the bathroom at least 4 to 5 times during this day, which I think was because of this increased metabolic rate that I got from the exercise. Usually I go for number 2 maybe once or twice a day. The hardest part of the challenge was just the time investment. Eventually it just kind of gets annoying. You're like, I have to do this for the next 3-4 hours and there's no like real innate need for it. I did it mostly for the content and for the fun challenge. That's why on a regular basis, I'm still kind of only walking around 8,000 to 10,000 steps per day, maybe up to 12,000. Walking is just one part of a healthy movement plan. It's not going to replace resistance training, even if you walk 100,000 steps every day. Check out my full evidence-based workout plan for longevity next.